let's recap. Where did we start? What was our starting point when we initiated this training or learning session? What was the first thing that we talked about? Anybody remembers? Context? I'm just going to write a few things down and then we'll take it from there, okay? What did we talk about first? Okay. And let's just touch upon the topics. Let's not go into the details of it, what we did when we spoke about research, but let's talk about the broad topics, broad themes that we touched upon in the last 2 days. What else? Project? Yes. Third one? MEL? MEL within project. Okay, what else? Yes, primary and secondary data, yes we did, but that was like a part of something bigger, right? So I'm asking you about the bigger themes that we explored. Yeah, we talked about logical model or logic model, we call it. We also talked about role of MEL in policy. Yes. What else? Project cycle we covered here. Stakeholder mapping, yes. And then theory of change, yes. Then we talked about results framework, right? Then we did research approaches, yes. And then we did fundamentals of impact evaluation. What else did we do? Yes. Okay. Anything else? We did a lot of things, within this topic. We covered a lot of things within each of these. But wow, look at this. This is the laundry list of things that we talked about in the last 2 days. And it's quite an achievement. Give yourself a round of applause. Yeah. And I hope at least, I'm glad that you remembered all of it, right? And these are some of the things that we talk about every day when we do M&E. Okay? Now, within this topic, let's move into what we talked about, each of these things. But I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to write. I want somebody to volunteer, come up, and then write about what we... So let me take a picture of this page first. Can someone come over here and let's start with project. What research we know, research is like an overarching thing that we talked about, right? Project. What is a project? Can someone come up here and write what are the 4 components of project? You can volunteer to come up here or I can call you. The choice is yours. There are 4 elements of a project that we talked about. Anyone remembers? Do you want to come? Do you want to come and write? Yeah? Okay. And everybody will help you. You just have to write. What if you are to define a project, there are 4 elements that you need to remember. What are those? Yeah. Anything else? There's one more thing. Sorry? No, not retention. One more thing. Activities, yes. Yeah, add it here. Okay? Yeah, brilliant. A project is nothing but set of activities conducted with a specific amount of resources within a stipulated amount of time to achieve certain objectives, right? Objectives kind of are coming from the problems. We identify problems and then we choose what problems can you address, what problems can the project address, and then you have certain resources to implement your project to meet these objectives within a timeline with a certain set of activities. Thank you. Next is MEL in a project. Let's say this is a project starting 2020, ending in 2025. Now I want somebody to come up here and tell me when will monitoring happen, when will evaluation happen, and when does learning happen. Who's going to come? Anyone from there? That corner? No one's making eye contact with me. Okay, you are not looking at me at all. You want to come up? Do you want to come up? No? Who wants to come up? We'll help you. It's just that you need to go out. Do you want to go? You? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you can write it down. But 3 questions. When does monitoring happen? When does evaluation happen? And when does learning happen? In this duration of break. This is the project start. This is the project end. Yes. When do monitor? Yeah. When can monitoring happen? We want to write a little bigger so that everybody would want. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So baseline, and then after that implementation, and then monitoring, and then evaluation. Right? This is the correct sequence, but I just want to add a few things. Baseline happens before implementation, like he rightly pointed out. Implementation happens across 2020 to 2025, right? And monitoring can happen concurrently. Parallelly, monitoring can happen. Evaluation, when we say baseline, baseline also comes within the broad ambit of evaluation. So what we can say here is, rather than saying evaluation, we can say end line. So end line and baseline, sometimes midline, make this is the entire spectrum of evaluation. All right, you got it right. Logical model. What are the 5 elements of logic model? Who wants to come up? Do you want to come up, any one of you? You want to go? Go? Yeah. Is this correct? How many of you agree this is the right sequence? Hands up. How many of you agree? Yes. This is the right sequence. One of the things that you need to remember here is the word logic. Right? This flow needs to have logic. If you have input or resources, in other words, we also call it resources. There are multiple, nomenclatures for this. These are also called resources, right? We have resources based on availability of these resources. Based on that, we do process or activities. Process is also called activities, and all these are results. This is immediate result. This is intermediate result. This could also be a longer term result, and this obviously is also longer term. Goal or impact. Sometimes people call this impact as well. Okay. But what you see, what is important to notice is the if and then. If this happens, then this happens. Right? You can't just directly go to this. There's always like a stepping stone towards each of the next steps. Okay. Who wants to do theory of change? How do we start formulating theory of change, first of all? Where do we start? Yeah, let's go ahead. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So, theory of change always starts with an impact. You can choose the sequence of it. He has done like a, what is it? This is vertical. Yeah, it's a vertical logic, right? He's starting with impact, outcome, input, activities. This is again input, output. So, this is flip. So, you have to first write resources and then input. Activities, sorry, yeah. This input and resources are the same. Input and resources are the same. And then there are elements of assumption, risk, and one more thing that you missed is context. Theory of change is always developed in a context with certain assumptions, also acknowledging the risk and again having a logical flow. Okay? And this kind of defines where your project wants to start and where it wants to end. What is the pathway? We call it impact pathway as well, right? You'll hear people either say theory of change or say impact pathway. So whenever we talk to a client, we say, do you have a theory of change or do you have an impact pathway? So some of the things that you need to remember is logic, context, assumptions, risk. One more thing that I don't know whether we talked about it or not. There's something called preconditions in theory of change. Okay? Preconditions are nothing but the fact that if you have resources, you can achieve output, right? And only if you achieve output, then you will be able to achieve outcome. So this is a precondition for this. So there's something called preconditions as well. So one, logic, second, start with context and then do impact pathway with assumptions, also acknowledging the risk and factoring precondition that this, if this happens, then only this is. So whenever you do measurement, what you do is you look at whether this has been achieved. If this has been achieved, there is a merit in looking at this. Because if preconditions are not met, then your logic is broken. Okay, so couple of things, couple of words to remember: context, assumptions, risk, precondition, impact logic. Okay, all of these elements build a theory of change. Okay, let's take education example. Increase in what's the literacy? Increased literacy is the impact. That's it. Okay. You start with impact, then there's outcome. Increase attendance. There is output. Is increased enrollment. Input is, let's say, activities on the let's say midday meal, let's use it. Okay, so this is the logic that the program, we are trying to achieve improved literacy. The outcome is improve attendance. Enrollment is the output, and then midday meal. So midday meal is the activity which is attracting people to enroll or attracting students to enroll at the school. But for example, these are 4 boxes. This will lead, the logic is that if this happens, then this happens, then this happens. Precondition is nothing but if this does not happen, then the logic here is broken. Okay, so if there is no enrollment, there are no students coming, then that means the students will not be attending classrooms sessions, right? And if there is no attendance, then there is this is a very straightforward or linear kind of an approach. It doesn't mean that if you don't go to school, you can't be literate. It's not, that doesn't hold true. There are so many other scenarios where you can educate yourself. But in this case, we are saying that if they attend school, then their literacy levels will go up. But if this does not happen, this will not happen. For example, similarly, if this happens, but this does not happen, this is not going to. So these are preconditions to this, achieving this. This is a precondition to achieving this. Right? So when we do measurement, we not only look at impact, okay, what has been the literacy level, has there been a change in literacy level. We also see whether there has been a change in enrollment, whether there has been change in attendance. If these hold true, then there's a likelihood that this also hold true or change happen there also. Yeah.
Also, that's why oftentimes to fulfill these preconditions, we also have activities between outputs and outcomes. Because of this, to fulfill this link, also you need certain activities. It's not always possible that on their own, once people are enrolled, they will start also attending it. So, enrolling a girl child might not mean that she's coming to school regularly. If there's not a toilet for a, let's say, an adolescent girl, she will not be coming to school during menstrual periods because there's no toilet. So while you might have enrolled her in a school, you haven't really improved attendance. So there are always also activities between output and outcome. Activities are not merely between inputs and outputs.
And if you don't do activities, then there's the play of assumption is there. We are assuming that the school already has a toilet, right? So if that assumption doesn't hold true, then your precondition that is not met. I mean, it can't go from here to here. So that is why preconditions, assumptions, risk are very important to outline right in the outset of the when you design a project, so that you are not accountable for that, right? So you are also acknowledging that this is the extent that we can go. We can only teach. We can only capacitate teachers. We can't build toilets. Toilet has to be built by somebody else. We are not accountable for that, and we are hoping that toilets are already in place because it plays a larger role in your attendance. Okay, good. One of the important components of a results framework again follows the same logic, if and then. It has the same impact pathway. But one thing which is differentiates theory of change from results framework is more to do with operationalizing the theory of change, right? So one key thing that we need to produce when we are producing results, creating results framework, is indicators. Can someone tell me what are the 5 elements of an indicator? Sorry. Time bound? Yeah. Anyone? Anything else? Is she missed or something? Simple? Yes. Measurable? Yes. So there's always something called SMART. We got simple, measurable. What is A and R? Indicators should always be SMART. That's the abbreviation we use. Like if we are defining an indicator, simple, measurable. Achievable. Attainable, no? Achievable, attainable. Practical, in the sense you got the gist right. It has to be practical or attainable. And what is R? I'm also forgetting. What's R? Relevant. Okay, so when you say, when somebody asks you to create an indicator, these are the 5 things to keep in mind. It has to be simple, in the sense that we know whom we are talking about, what we are talking about. It shouldn't be like vague. It can't be like empowerment. Empowerment is like a vague term, right? It's a very broad term. So we need to define that. It should be measurable. It has to have a unit. It should be attainable, practical, that we are talking about, something which the program can achieve. It has to be relevant to the context. It is time bound. It can't just be, we'll attain some XYZ goals. And this is an additional factor which we talked about, which she rightly pointed out. It has to be value neutral. We can't say positive or negative change, right? But yeah, SMART is something we go with. Okay? Yeah. 5 OECD DAC criteria we talked about. Who wants to take a stab at it? You want to do that? Go ahead. Five or six? Six, no? 7. Okay. Okay, 7. The 7 criteria. 5 was the original one, yeah. And what's the last one? Awesome. Yeah. These are the 7 OECD DAC criteria. Relevance is nothing. Is my program relevant to the current context? Coherence is whether my program is coherent with the internal project goal, or is it coherent with the external larger global discourse, right? We talked about internal coherence as well as external coherence here. Effectiveness is nothing but whether my strategies are effective to reach to the goal or the envisioned goal of this project. This is with regards to the strategies. Efficiency, this is with regards to the resources or cost, right? And impact, you already know this is the result that we want to see. What is whether my project has been able to achieve the results that I envisioned during the start. Sustainability has 2 components, result sustainability, and what was the other one? What's the other one? Sorry? Intervention sustainability. Intervention and institutional sustainability. Timeliness, you all know whether I have been able to achieve my project, have been able to achieve the goals in a timely manner. Okay, so these are the 7 DAC criteria that we talked about yesterday. Okay, good. That's good job. I'm glad that you remember.
Let's have a round of applause for all of us. A little louder. Thank you. Okay, we'll just do 2 quick exercises recapping of what you did these 2 days. So, first exercise, what we're going to do is, we'll show you a group of pictures with numbers written down, and they are going to show you what happens in an MEL in a project. Different things that might happen in a MEL. And after all the images have been shown, we have to put them in the correct sequence. Right now, they're in different order. Okay? So please take note of what the picture is. Just look at it closely and let's figure out what should be the correct sequence. First here, what is the one word that you see that keeps repeating here? Louder. Yes. So keep that in mind. Second picture, what do you see this person is standing on? These are your reports. Because she says they're really useful to the person. So these are your reporting of your M&E. Next is pretty self-explanatory. It's the baseline. Here we have theory of change. Lastly, she's talking about what kind of evaluation do you need. She says our 3-year project is coming to an end, so we were told we needed to have an evaluation. So what do you think she's talking about? What type of evaluation will this be? Yes, it's an end-line evaluation. So now let's put these pictures in the correct sequence. Should I go through them once again? And we'll put them. So, okay. First was, we have monitoring. Second is reporting. Third, we have baseline. Next is theories of change. And lastly is the end-line evaluation. So what do you think is going to be the correct sequence? What comes first? Baseline. Do all of you agree the baseline is the first here? Anybody who disagrees? Okay. So this is, we say first. What comes next? What do you think will come next? Any guesses? We can go through the pictures again. So here we have somebody saying theories of change. Everybody agrees or disagrees? A show of hands, okay, who all agree that next should be theory of change? A quick raise of hands. So those who are not raising their hands, do you think something else is going to come? Okay, we have a monitoring here. Who all think monitoring should come next? Okay, we have 2 hands. You still haven't raised hand. Do you have any other option that you want to cover? Let's put it here for now. So either it's going to be theory of change or it's going to be monitoring. What will be the third picture? Theory of change. Okay. So she says it's going to be theory of change. Anybody else who disagrees? What do you think, sir, should be coming next? Okay. It's the same thing I'm repeating here. Okay, let's go with this. So it's either going to be TOC or monitoring of change. Next, we have 2 more left, reports and end-line evaluation. What's going to come next? Reports. Who all agree reports, please raise your hands. Okay. Reports. And those who don't agree, I guess end-line is what you think. So either it's going to be this or it's going to be the reverse. Right? Now let's see what is the correct sequence. First, we have a theory of change. You do that before your baseline. That is at the stage of your designing the project. What will you measure in baseline? What change do you want to see? What indicators will be all in theories of change and your results framework. Next, we have baseline. Once we have done or made our theory of change, we'll do a baseline. Then it's monitoring. So your baseline data is collected. You know what is the existing status with which you have to work for the population in the area, and you start implementation and you are monitoring the implementation. Next, we have end line evaluation. And lastly, we have reports, because reports are summarizing what you found out in end line as well. Technically also, though, baseline will also have its own reporting, but here the idea is reports and learning is what we are gathering here. So learning would happen after you have evaluated that I reached from baseline to end line here. So do remember, theories of change are often formulated at the beginning of the project, before you start even a baseline. So we have one more exercise of a similar nature. Now, I'm going to show you 5 sets of pictures again. In each picture, one word will be highlighted. Take note of that word. The first is, are we making an impact? And the highlighted word here is impact. Second picture is, we have limited resources, so I'm going to suggest we only fund projects that work really well. So the highlighted word here is limited resources. In our third picture, they're saying outcomes, and the highlighted word is outcomes. The fourth picture, they're saying that activity of a lunch subsidy in 4 schools will actually end a world hunger. But the highlighted word here is activity. And lastly, our picture is about an output. So do we have the highlighted words? Should I go through them once again? I'll go through them once again. In the first picture we are making an impact. The highlighted word is impact. In the second picture, we're talking about limited resources. The highlighted word, resources. In the third picture, the highlighted word is outcomes. In fourth, we have activity. And in the last picture, we have output. So what I want you to do here is put these pictures in the right order for theory of change articulation. Now, let's start with the correct sequence. What do you think? So what is the first? Please. Oh, where? Oh, these. Let's have it again. Oh, you can read this? Wow. I couldn't from there. So, you just did it again as it is. Who's gonna come and write? Any volunteers for writing it again? Oh, he's standing? Are you standing? Oh, I saw you standing again. Are you really wanting to come? Beside you. You want to come and write, sir? Yes. You want to come and write? Yes, see, I see you standing again. So we're doing the backward mapping here. Like when we actually draw a theory of change, we start with an impact. And you're writing activity. Next, we go to our outputs. Outcomes. And last, we have input. Oh, sorry, impact. I only put it out. I don't think you needed to worry about the charts. Resources, or like you said, it's input. So we have our correct sequence here. We start with the limited resources, which translates into how we're going to implement through the activities, through which the immediate results are the outputs, the intermediate results are your outcomes or the short-term results, and the long-term result is your impact. We have a problem that we have here. The 35% of children under 5 years, our problem scenario says, are stunted. And very few have good dietary diversity or feeding practices. Now in comes your donor Zen with all the money, and they decide they're going to make a grant to make and distribute nutritious food and dietary behavior change communication strategies. Now they want to do an independent evaluation of this grant, of the money that they're putting in, and now they hire an implementer, Good Thoughts, who is going to propose solutions for them. Now as our exercise, we have the problem here, and we have our context. What is our problem? 35% of children under 5 years of age are stunted. We know donor Zen has come in and he wants solution from implementers for an independent evaluation. So as your exercise is, what results do you think as an implementer would you want to see when this sort of exercise is happening? With the money that donor Zen has given you, what results do you want to see that will help solve the problem? Let's try to visualize the change we want to see to achieve these results. And how will we report on these results? So we will give you a couple of chart papers, and let's get divided into groups, and let's try to build what will be how we envision we'll achieve these results.
Let's go beyond theory of change, because we have done like multiple theory of changes already. So let's focus on approaches. What approach? Yeah. So Zen wants an independent evaluation of the grant, right? So we are now thinking about evaluation. We're not thinking about designing a theory of change. The theory of change is already there, let's say. So we want you to tell us what approach will you take, what research approach, for evaluation, approach for evaluation, what kind of data will you collect? Okay. How will you report the data? What kind of reporting? And then on what indicators? These are the 4 things that we want you to work on. You know what are the different kind of approaches. We have also talked about types of data. I think when we talked about data, the data corresponds to the type of reporting that we want to do, and we extensively talked about indicators. So let's work on these 4 elements. The context is this. You want to do that in group or individually? Okay. Then you have natural group formation since yesterday, so you can pick the same group.
How we'll do it is we'll have one person from each of the groups coming here and telling us at least one aspect of what they thought could be an approach, or one indicator, one data source that they thought would be useful or could be used to do the evaluation, and how would their group think that we can report on this.
The research approach that we are doing, it's qualitative, and indicator is like we have actually three. Number one is percentage of children having good dietary and feeding practices, and then number two is number of beneficiaries of nutritious fair food and dietary behavior change communication. Then number of children attended the Anganwadi center, but we could write only one. And in the data, we are doing the primary. But for the report, we couldn't get anything, so we're confused with the report.
Okay. Okay. So, does anybody from your group add on to this? If you guys thought any different, or indicator.
The expose because we already have the baseline, so we kept it in expose. Indicator will see the increase or decrease of percentage as 35 was already there. So then we look for the primary data. Baseline was 35% of children stunted. Yeah.
Oh wow, you stood up on your own. I'm very grateful.
So we just want to check the percentage change of standard children. That's why we go only with quantitative and percentage change primary data. And because we just want to evaluate the outcome, whether the grant to make this nutritious food is actually working in reducing the number of standard children.
Great, thank you.
Right. So we will be following a mixed approach, which is both quantitative and qualitative data. Our indicators will be, for the data, we'll be we'll be using both primary and secondary data. Our indicators will be the percentage of children measured at Anganwadi centers, because that's where the main point of distribution will happen. Our secondary data also will be from hospitals reporting data, data collected from hospitals where the children are being reported as malnourished or undernourished. And then we also have secondary data from children at monitoring of children at preschool levels. And for our report, we're going to be writing both a mixture of both summative and formative data.
Great, thank you. I'll come back to you. Your group at the end. Great, you have a volunteer. And I'll stand here actually to have anybody of you come.
For our approach, we are choosing with a qualitative, and for our indicator, we choose the percentage change it might decrease or increase in the stunted children. And for data, we are trying to collect primary data, and for our reports, we will be giving a formal report.
Great, thank you. I think you volunteered. So I'm going to stand, then that's where then I'm going to personally bring them in. They're waiting for me to usher. That's okay. Whatever you've had, we are happy with that. I'm going to explain why.
Approach will be quantitative because of the nature of the problem, and indicator selected would be the percentage change of children taking perhaps 2 meals daily. And I've been thinking about data and report. I can't come up with one.
Should I come to escort anybody here for volunteer? Oh, great, thank you.
In our approach, we're using the mixed approach because the donor is doing two things. It's a grant to make and distribute nutritious food and dietary behavior change. So the nutritious food distribution is more quantifiable, and the behavior change might have more association with the society and things like that. So that's qualitative. And our indicator is a percentage of change of children receiving nutritious food. Our data is primary data.
Thank you. That was very insightful, actually. Very well explained, too. Are we done with all the groups? Yeah, so couple of things that, starting from the end one, that the rationale for why you selected mixed methods is spot on. That you have two aspects here where they're wanting to make a grant to distribute nutritious food and behavior change communication. Oftentimes, behavior indicators are something that are very hard to move, and behavior change communication is something that you need to also look at qualitatively, because it's a very subjective nature of a intervention. The way people receive communication would differ. So you would want to know why certain strategies of communication would have worked and why some would not have worked. So that's one thing that comes to mind. It's very rightly put on that we would need that sort of aspect. And another thing that you said, sir, was very right, that when in your approach of choosing a quantitative, because of the nature of the problem that we have stated here, a very quantitative nature problem has been stated. The way the intervention is going to be makes it mixed method, but definitely if you're looking at 35% of children as a problem statement, quantitative immediately comes to mind. Also, it's a very good indicator because you're taking specifically about things that you can easily measure. Saying that nutritious food is being taken is slightly vague. You need to define what do you mean by nutritious food and what is good nutritious food that a person should be having. Because you have to standardize. You are going to ask different households, so everybody's different understanding of nutritious could be different, and they might tell you, yes, I have nutritious food. Unless and until you specify it, break it down, have indicators which are very specifically talking about things, you might not be able to understand whether your change was achieved or not. So let's try thinking about things like receiving 2 meals a day, or even receiving nutritious food, but specify it further. Another aspect that somewhere I think even we as facilitators might need to work better is focus here on question, if you all remember, was approach for evaluation. Qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods are methods. That are the large approach. What you were writing here on outcome, summative evaluations, those are your evaluation designs and approaches that you would need to take. The way of mechanism, formal reporting, is a very good way of stating that you would be reporting that way. Summative evaluation is a type of evaluation, it's not reporting per se. So reporting of data could happen in different ways. You could be writing a report, you could be disseminating through more communication material, you could be feeding it into the next project plans, because here at this point of time, they have decided to make a grant. We haven't said that they have done the project. So end line does not really apply here. We're at the initial stage. Summative describes it very aptly because it has both baseline and end line. So you would be starting at baseline. Formative also describes it very aptly because you are at the formative stage of implementation. You might want to figure out how to go about your strategies, and that's what a formative research helps you out with. At the beginning of a project, you want to figure out what strategy would work well with this population. So I do a formative stage to understand what the status is like, what strategies. Oftentimes, those are very in-depth studies, so formative study fits very well there. And change in stunted children, definitely we would be measuring. So that's a good indicator, but it's a very broad indicator of impact. You have to break it down further. Also looking at, we're distributing nutritious food. So things like when you were talking about one of the indicators that mentioned on children coming to Anganwadi center would not really tell you that whether they had nutritious food at the Anganwadi center. Just that indicator might not suffice. Because even like we studied, that you might have enrolled people in school, they might not be attending school. You might have children enrolled at Anganwadi centers, they might not be getting nutritious food there. So it's very important to have very relevant indicators to what the problem at hand is. Because they have issues in dietary diversity, feeding practices, and they want to distribute nutritious food. So activity happening at the Anganwadi center focused on distribution of nutritious food is what our indicators should also look at.
I have a few observations. Let's start with the first one. Every one of you talked about percentage of children because it's written there, but you missed out the age of the children, right? So that is something that our indicator needs to be the first component of making a good indicator. It has to be specific. Stunting can be looked at in children below 5, above 5, etc., right? So I think that's something I think all of you missed, although you've said yes, percentage change in children, but you missed the under 5. So that needs to be specified there. The second bit, when you talked about mixed, what is this? Mixed veg, mixed alcohol. What is this? Are you mixing something? This is mixed methods. So you don't write just mixed, right? I mean, people can interpret it differently. Right, okay, we are going to have a mixed veg kind of a thing. So here, I think whenever you're writing mixed methods, mixed, you have to accompany it with methods. It's not mixed method, it's mixed methods because there are two methods that we're using. Okay. The other thing is when you were defining indicators, some of you defined outcome indicators, some of you defined long-term impact indicators, some of you defined output indicators. Percentage of children weighed in Anganwadi is an output indicator. They're going there. So, I mean, this format did not allow that disaggregation to happen, but I think you've got the gist of it, right? So there are different kinds of indicator which Shika also talked about. The other thing when we're talking about indicators, I am sure people working in the health sector might know, but when we're talking about feeding practices, dietary diversity, there are already well-defined indicators put in place by WHO, by FAO, by IFPRI. So you can always go back to those indicators which are already tested in different geographies, including India and globally. Right? You can just pick those indicators up and say that these are the indicators which are well defined, well validated, well measured. You can pick that up. For example, dietary diversity has, and food feeding practices has, dietary diversity has adequate dietary diversity. Percentage of children under 5 years of age having adequate dietary diversity. That is the indicator. It's a standard indicator. If you look at NFHS also, they use the same thing. So it's a good idea to go back to those reports, those reports that come out every 5 years, every 1 year, every 2 years, and also look at WHO, FAO's reports to find these indicators. You don't have to sit and write your own indicators. They're already defined. It's just that you need to do a little bit of research. Similarly, feeding practices, we have something called a minimum or adequate adequate dietary diversity, and the other is MAD, minimum adequate diet, right? These are two indicators. So within this dietary diversity and feeding practices, you will find several indicators, and you'll have to sub-indicators. You'll have to pick and choose which one fits the best to answer your question. Another thing that the group here wrote ex post evaluation they wanted to do. Here, the difference is, ex post evaluation is a right answer, because problem is 35% of the children below 5 years of age in India are stunted. This is a India figure. We have not said in particular districts. So we might not have a baseline. That is why we are doing an ex post. We might look at, a comparison group or a counterfactual to see what has been the change because of the program. But this does not talk about baseline. This talks about India status, right? So if there was a baseline in 2020 in this particular geography, the proportion of children who are stunted was this. Then that can be considered as baseline, and we can do a pre and post kind of a design. But this one is India figure, right? So we might want to look at those aspects also when we are designing our approaches. Thank you. This was really insightful, and I hope you get to use this in your work also. Yeah. We have 15-20 more minutes. We want to end this session with one important topic, and that is research ethics, right? We do all of this, and if we don't follow the ethics, the ethical principles, the ethical virtues that a researcher or an M&E person should have, then there's no point of doing that. You're just troubling the respondents. You're just troubling, yourself as well. So there are certain principles that we need to, ethical principles that we need to consider when we are doing any kind of research or monitoring or evaluation. Because like we talked about yesterday and day before, people are at the crux of it, right? We are dealing with people. We are not dealing with subjects, right? We are dealing with people. That is why we need to be very cognizant of how we talk to them, what we talk about, how do we approach them and all that. So there are principles that are defined, predefined principles or principles of ethics that we need to follow. And if you just Google them, you will find every organization, the big ones, having their own glossary of things that the ethical components that you need to follow. So we are going to talk about broader ones. If you want to know more about ethics of research, you can do just Google search and you'll find everything. What do you think is, as per your understanding, what do you think are some of the ethical principles that we have to follow when we are talking to people? Forget research. We are talking to people. What are the basic principles that we follow in day to day, in a professional setup? Sorry? Accountability, confidentiality, okay. What else? Empathy, yeah. And all thanks to autocorrect, we don't need to remember. Sorry? Yes. What else? You need to be unbiased, non-judgmental, yes. What else? Privacy, yes. Anything else? Avoidance of harm is something that we have to follow. In research, we also follow something called predefining exclusion and inclusion criteria. We can't talk to everybody, right? If that person is, if you want to talk about A and C, we can't talk to a father. We have to talk to a mother or a pregnant woman. We can't talk to the men, right? So there is some exclusion and inclusion criteria that we need to predefine. And these are non-negotiables. We all got it. I think we don't need to spend too much time on this. Confidentiality is saying that whatever you say or whatever we write down, we are not going to expose your name, your address, all the identifier that comes with the data, right? We are only going to talk about data. So one of the basic things, whenever we share data, either it be monitoring data, evaluation data, qualitative data, quantitative data, we don't take names. We don't use their addresses. It is important for us to eliminate all the identifiers, something called identifiers in data, which would track them back. Today, if I'm saying, okay, I have a problem, I gave a honest feedback, but the recipient of the feedback did not like it, right? So if we have if we have all these identifiers of this person giving the feedback, there is a chance that the person who's receiving the feedback might just go back and harm the person in whatever manner or whatever intensity. So that is why with confidentiality, there is always an element of eliminating identifiers. So whenever you share data, make sure that the identifiers in your data are eliminated and not to be used in any dissemination of findings. Okay? So if you are doing a research, sometimes you have to take ethical approvals from institutional review boards. Do you know about that? So many of the times when there is a kind of human participation, yeah. Whenever there is a human participation, when we're talking to people, we have to take ethical permission from something called institutional review board. This is one of the projects, so I'll just focus on the bold words, okay? Whenever you do any kind of research, you need to introduce yourself. You can't just go and start blabbering, right? You need to tell why you are here, what's your name, where are you coming from, what is the objective of the study, how much time will you take, so that you prepare the respondents. Okay? So this is a consent form, and consents are supposed to be taken in writing. So, we'll have to have a signature. If the person is not able to read and write, then we take thumb impression, but consent form needs to be signed and then taken in person. So yeah, what we do is we do introduction, that my name is blah blah blah, I am from this organization, right? We do this, and then we talk about the purpose. Why are we here? Okay, we talk about, this survey is to understand XYZ. So we write about our program here, what we want to do, why we want to talk to you. Then selection of participants. Here, the exclusion and inclusion criteria. They might ask you why you're talking to me, why aren't you talking to the other person? Then you'll have to explain the fact that you are the right person to tell me because you are a part of this particular topic that we are exploring. Okay? One important thing, procedure. We shall take about 30 minutes to finish this survey. Because most of the times what happens is we have long questionnaires, right? 20 pages, 30 pages, 100 questions. We have to prepare the respondents because we are just going there unannounced and asking. If somebody comes to your office saying, okay, I'm going to take a survey, and then sits for 2 hours, you're going to miss out on so many things, right? So you have to prepare the respondents that this interview is going to take X amount of time. So you have to be very explicitly open about it. The risk and benefits, like you talked about. We can't give false hope to them. So we talk about risk and benefit. There is no risk in the study. Why do we put risk? For example, if you're talking about sensitive topics like intimate partner violence, right? They're already scared. They don't want to talk about it. And what if they talk about it and somebody else finds out, and then they face double discrimination or double the trouble kind of doubles up. So if there is a risk, you have to talk about the risk. If you're working in child protection domain, you have to have a mitigation strategy if you find about violence against children, right? You have to have lawyers in place. You have to have proper protocol in place to do that. So all of this risk needs to be identified right up front. Benefits, like you said, humko kya milega? What do we get out of this, right? Do we get money? Do we get some schemes? Do we get linkages to something else? If there is nothing, then we have to explicitly state that too. Okay? But what we have said is you will not have financial benefit for participation in this study. In some of the geographies, we give them money. For example, I was working in Cambodia, and there the usual practice is you pay certain amount of money to the respondents, right? And it is a known practice. You have to actually budget for that if you're talking to them. So what I write here will be, you will be given X amount of money as a compensation for you for your time. Here we are not giving, that is why we have not written. We have said we are not giving you money. Yeah, but what you eventually have to say is, we are not giving you money, but your information will help us design the program better, right? That kind of assurance needs to be given to the respondents. Voluntary participation. This is very important. Consent. We talked about consent. Without consent, you can't do anything. If you go down, do you consent? You have a yes or a no. What we usually do is, in the questionnaire, if they say no, our questionnaire, we use electronic technology, we use technology to collect data, computer-assisted technology. If they say no, we stop the survey. We don't move forward because we don't have consent. Otherwise, if you continue without consent, you might get beaten up afterwards because you'll have to produce audit trail sometimes. So you will be digging your own grave if you go forward without consent. Okay, voluntary participation, yes, here. So sometimes what happens is they say, okay, yeah, I'm okay to talk. But then it goes on and on and on. After 30 minutes, they say, no, I have work, then I have to go, right? Now, what will you do? In that case, what we have is, we save the file, but we have an option of saying that interview was completed, interview was incomplete. Interview incomplete because XYZ reasons, right? So voluntary participation is not only for the initial phase where they're saying, okay, I am ready to talk, but if they don't want to talk after some point, or if they don't want to talk about certain subjects because we'll have n number of questions, then we have to appreciate, we have to respect their decision to not participate further, right? We have to write it down that, because of XYZ reasons, the respondent was not comfortable, etc., etc., and then we stop the survey. We talked about confidentiality, right? We can't name names, that's there. And then another important thing, sometimes we do back check and follow up, right? Because sometimes we need that. Sometimes we have to go back and, ask more information. So it's good to always say that, we want to come back to you, and me or my colleague or some people, some representative for my organization is going to come back, so that they're also prepared and they know that, it's easier for you also. The next time you go, you can just refer to that point where we talked about XYZ in that day during that month, etc. Yeah. And the compensation. You will not be given any compensation for participating in this study. Plain, simple message. We are not going to give you money. If you are giving, then you have to tell them that you are going to get this amount of money and everybody is going to get this amount of money, if that is the practice. So, these are some of the things that we need to be cognizant about when we do research of any kind. Forget research. When you are talking to people, we all go to field, right? We just go visit them, irrespective of whether we want to actually do a proper research or not. So that is, in that case also we need to follow all of these principles, right? Being unbiased, being non-judgmental. For example, sometimes we go to health facilities, we observe deliveries, we observe the services, how the services are being provided, and sometimes we tend to know more because we have been in the sector for long, and we have this tendency, being human, that we like to correct other people, that, oh, no, what you are doing is not right, what I am saying is right, and that is not a good practice. Let them do. You are not there to judge people, you're just there to observe. So you don't have the right to judge them. You don't have to right to correct them. Eventually, later on, if they say, okay, can you tell me how can I improve? Maybe then you can have an informal conversation with them by saying that, although I am not allowed to, because you are doing a great job, you have to appreciate that they are doing a great job, but you can give them advice which is non-judgmental. That can be done, because oftentimes they ask us, okay, well, how did I do? Did I say the right answer? And that kind of question we get in the field whenever we talk to them. You just have to tell them that, yeah, whatever you said is an information for me, and it is going to help my project be better, and plan my days, my strategies better. So that's what you have to. These are some of the things that you have to take care of. Anyone wants to add anything else that we have not touched upon here? So that can be taken case by case, but the other person whose name you are going to take has to be well informed. It shouldn't come as a surprise to them, and I think ideally their name should not be taken irrespective of what they do or what they don't. That's the go-to principle.
So just to add, I think so in some cases, definitely in terms of specifically when we talk about government implementation, you need the names to be able to provide information, schemes, provisions. So that aspect falls outside the purview of what we just discussed. In that, because that information is relevant for sharing or for service delivery. Because we can't go ahead and try to find people, did you apply, I'll give you. That sort of thing can't work, right? So that is not per se the monitoring what we're talking about. Here we're talking about collecting information pertaining to research or trying to understand. Here, because it's service delivery, then it's not. We are saying if you have to share that information for assessing the monitoring data, there they should not need the names of people, because they have to understand how overall scheme delivery is going. If your decision maker has to understand, they won't be going to people's houses, so they don't need that data. They just want to know from you that in your district, so many people are getting, so that sort of information is relevant for them. So there we remove the identifiers. In terms of service delivery, it's applicable. Yes. So like I said, that where it's mandatory because you need that information for service delivery, there you can't say you won't be giving the names because it's for a different purpose. And all of this, whatever Kezia showed, because we are giving that information, so the entire process is called informed consent. And what she was just discussing about, that how there are institutional review boards where before I conduct an evaluation with human subjects, I do a presentation to them. I share all of my study tools, all of my consent forms in the local language, so that they can review whether I'm approaching people correctly or not. And all of this information is already given to people. So a review board will then tell me whether they can have suggestions on how I can be ethically better my project approach, how I should not be doing certain things. Or in cases of vulnerable populations, like she was talking about with children. So we also have a section here in some cases where we give them information that in cases of distress, if we're talking about violence, or if in a coming project I'm going to be talking to women about the violence they may face during childbirth at hospitals, so I would also be giving them information to reach out to anybody that they can help, reach out for help. So if they need support in terms of psychological distress, if I am asking them to relive a situation or share, it can cause it can trigger an incident. So it's my responsibility as a researcher. I also provide them with the information that in case you want to talk to somebody, please reach out to them, and here is their number. And we have already told the people that, somebody could come. Or the mechanism of reporting in terms of where it's legal, that if I'm collecting information about children, I will always also take consent from the parents. There are consent from the parents in cases of below 18, unless they're married. If it's a married one, we do not really need parent consent in those cases. Obviously 15 to 18 is the category. For children, if we get to know about any situation of violence, we are legally mandated to report it to a police or a legal authority, because then it would be a crime on our part if we don't report about violence. And we share information for those. So this forms the basis for us. In every project, we do a presentation for the review board if we are going to be collecting information on humans, participants, and respondents, and ethical issues like that. So that case was different, obviously. Any other suggestions or anything else you might want to clarify with us? I think that's then a wrap for the ethical considerations for all sorts of research, from monitoring data or an evaluation, or even sharing the learnings, if we're going to go ahead with sharing the learnings. And that's, I think, also a wrap from me and Kezia. And I would just hand over to our colleague Rajib for the culmination of the program.
Thank you, Kezia and Shikha, for conducting this, I think, almost 2 days, no? But spread over 3 days. And thank you, the participants, basically. I missed yesterday's session, But I came and sat in the morning, and I saw, like, the way the participants interacted with the resource person. I'm really happy that the people volunteered to speak and contribute, because these kind of sessions should be always interactive. Like, it's not like, telling something, giving some information to you, but also to receive information, receive your, to learn more. So it's basically co-learning from these kind of sessions. It shouldn't be a lecture-based kind of session. Then it won't impact. It won't be impactful. I mean, it will be like, that's something we have completed, but the people, I mean, if we go and ask what you have taken from this, nothing is there. So definitely, so it must be interactive. And actually, after the first day, we are thinking how to make this more interactive, and I'm so happy to see these kind of, like, responses from you here on theory of change, on a log frame. Absolutely fantastic. Let me tell you about little kind of thing on monitoring and evaluation. See, we know, no? I mean, monitoring and evaluation as government functionaries, as government officers, you know how important. On the first day itself, we talked about its importance. Like, it should be evidence-driven kind of policy making. It's not like, I think we should do these things. It shouldn't like that. It should be designed on some data, on some evidence. Okay, and when we talk about data and evidence, it's about monitoring and evaluation. Now, the problem with monitoring and evaluation is it's generally not taught in academic institutes. No, I mean, if you look at Indian universities, you will rarely find any organization, any academic institute where this monitoring and evaluation is taught. Even I have been practicing not so much of monitoring but evaluation for last 20 years. How I learned about evaluation? I learned from my own practice. Okay, I started doing evaluation, and from there only I started understanding more about evaluation, and definitely a little bit about monitoring. So, but if you look at, like, the way this discipline is progressing, monitoring and evaluation, it primarily based on practice. So ultimate knowledge is being generated through practice. And who are the practitioners? You are the practitioners. You are practicing monitoring and evaluation. Whatever form you are practicing, but you are practicing monitoring and evaluation. And so that's why, like, most of us, not only in India, all over the world, if you look at the people who are at the, like, top level of, like, top, like, well-known, evaluators or evaluation thinkers, most of them basically learned from their practice. Okay. Actually, one thing I want to, because you are government officials, I am not too sure how much, not all of you perhaps will contribute for evaluation or evaluation design, but monitoring is one aspect what I think almost all of you will be part of it. Now, when we talk about monitoring, it's about systematic data collection. Now, when you are doing your activities, simultaneously you also collect data to see kind of a progress. I mean, monitoring is something we all practice of our own life. Morning, I live in Delhi, okay, and when I come to office to Sambodhi, it takes around, like, for me 40 minutes. I want to reach there by 9:30 sharp in office, okay, and and I start maybe at 9, and I have specific points on my route just to monitor my kind of progress. Like, by 9:15, I want to reach at least a place called Akshardham. Okay, so if I'm not reaching there by 9:15, that means I'm already late. And then the next phase should be, like, should make up this kind of, like, that because I'm lagging behind. So we practice monitoring, like, our watch, the wristwatch is primarily to help us to do our monitoring. Monitoring we practice everywhere. But what I want to tell you one story. Monitoring is definitely about systematic collection of data to feed into the intervention, into the program, and also to help ultimate in the evaluation. Monitoring is also could be very, very innovative. Monitoring can also improve the intervention, and that's the story, short story I want to tell you today. Okay, our neighboring country Bangladesh, from 80s onwards, even before that, they were suffering from severe crisis of diarrhea because waterborne disease, no? And so an organization, from 80s onwards, a lot of non-profit, non-governmental organizations came up in Bangladesh with international aid. An organization called BRAC, very famous, well-known NGO from Bangladesh. They started working in the field, to intervene and to stop, lot of people were dying out of diarrhea. Now, out of diarrhea, what is diarrhea? We say waterborne disease, basically bacterial infection. Okay, and what happens basically? Your body gets dehydrated. Okay, now one thing is body gets dehydrated, so you need to rehydrate your body. First thing, that is the treatment what we can do at home level only, and then definitely antibiotics to to stop the infection. Okay, but antibiotics is not there in the rural Bangladesh. It's not available cities or towns. You go to a pharmacist and you get antibiotics. It's not available. But rehydration process itself can stop from dying actually. Okay, because it's rural Bangladesh. It takes a lot of time to reach to maybe the nearest public health center. Now, so BRAC, what they did, they started providing the ORS to rehydrate your body. This is static packet. Okay, to all the family members, all the areas which got affected by this diarrhea. They did it very, very nicely. It was distributed very, very well. The monitoring data showed that it was distributed everywhere. But the rate, the people dying, okay, it didn't get reduced much. Okay, so data showing that it's distributed. It has, and when it was distributed, the person to whom the packet was handed over, he was also given that enough instruction how to use that ORS, but still it's not working. Then somebody, a supervisor level person only, like you, who are not exactly doing that intervention, but supervising how it's being done, just raised a question. Okay, the monitoring supervisor. Who is the person you are handing over that packet? Okay. Primarily to the male members of men are getting that packets because it's a conservative society. So then it's now become apparent that the man who is taking the packet, giving it, who takes care of the children or the people, sick people at home? Women primarily. So that information how to use that ORS is not getting conveyed properly to the person who is providing the care. Number one. Number two, what it came from this monitoring, that women in Bangladesh in those 80s and 90s, not many of them were literate. So whatever the instruction is printed on the packet very nicely, it's not working for them. And from that monitoring team, the two things came. One, as far as possible, use these women volunteers to go and hand it over to the women. One, okay, it's not possible to do it everywhere, but one thing was really helped them. The instruction should be something like graphical, not text. You use one part of this and 1 teaspoon of this ORS powder and in half a liter of water. No, it's not that. Graphical presentation. To show them one tip of of this ORS powder in 1 glass of water. Okay, and then within 6 months, a completely different kind of data, monitoring data showed that it's improving, it's working. So the intervention actually got improved from the monitoring, the people who are doing the monitoring. So I wanted to inspire you that that data is one thing, and also to help actually to help people actually, the actual beneficiaries from that particular program. Okay. Anyway, so thank you so much for to coming, and if we look at this kind of the module, the units we covered here, hope that you can connect with this your work with this kind of knowledge and perspective building and the skill that whatever we want to do here. It's a very, very basic kind of thing. When you go to the field, when you do the real life kind of monitoring and evaluation, you have to be very, very innovative. It doesn't match with the literature every time. You have to be very, very innovative. Case in Bangladesh, it may not, the literature didn't help them. The practice, the knowledge, the observation, okay, actually helps to improve your practice, your monitoring, evaluation, and your intervention. So this is basically to help you to understand the basics of monitoring and evaluation, and I am sure it will help you. But we'll come back with more modules actually in near future. So this is the very basic kind of thing. We'll come back with a little bit advanced module also on monitoring, evaluation, and also on different techniques of data collection, the sampling techniques, how to select your sample, how to do data analytics, and then how to do the visualization, data visualization, what coming from there, and also definitely to how to write report and how to present those findings in different formats. And I think a colleague of mine just told somebody from you only interested also to know about real-time monitoring, which is the new thing actually, and its use is very I mean getting like much more popular these days. We'll come back even with we have very good experts on real-time monitoring. So we'll come back to you with that different kind of tools and techniques on conducting real-time monitoring. That also will do. In this particular one-year program, you came to know from the first day only that we'll conduct this program for next 1 year, and we have different kind of modules. Now, what we'll do basically, we'll look at those modules. We'll see how we can revisit those modules and different kind of modules, special modules. They are on like health systems, health policies, public health, environment, climate, education. On gender, I think we have a few modules on gender, basic gender understanding. Then gender in the inclusive society, on public finance, on gender budgeting, and so also on technology, these new technologies, AI-based kind of thing, and its implications for policy making and the policy makers. So a lot of modules will be bringing over next 1 year. A small kind of a form has been given to you. It's basically a feedback form, and it is very important to know whether you liked or not liked this particular session that we conducted. This will help us to improve. This is also kind of evaluation, no? So this will help us to modify our own kind of modules and the way we are conducting we have to maybe revisit, and we have to think how we can make it much more impactful and more interactive for the future sessions. Okay, so that's all from my side. And thank you so much. But if you have any further question on our modules, on the way we have been conducting it, or on monitoring evaluation, still we have time. You can ask those questions.
Just adding on to what Rajiv said, the form that you've received, there must be some blank spaces. Although we have a module planned for the next 1 year, we'd be happy to take feedback on you on what are the practical aspects that you want to learn about, because we might come up with modules based on our understanding, but it'll be good to have your insights into what you actually want to learn about when we talk about and which is more practical, which is of more practical use in your work. So please feel free to write those topics as well in your feedback forms. Right? It was excellent interacting with you, Shikha, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and hope to see you again in the future. Thank you so much.